Good morning, everybody. Just going to get cranked up here, shoot a quick video here on relative frequency for the folks that are absent. So let's just kind of get into this thing. I'm a little tight on time. I'm running a little behind schedule this morning. So, okay. But really, relative frequency really is just taking this number, all right, this number from frequency and making a fraction and then changing it to a decimal. So you'll see how it all fits together. Let's get into this thing. Here we go. Relative frequency shows the ratio or fraction, right? The ratio of selected outcomes of a total. It can be displayed as a decimal or a percent. Okay. So you're going to take that number by the total number. And you'll notice that they put 9 out of 25, changed it to a decimal, changed it to a percent. Um, so so it's pretty easy stuff, and we're actually going to kind of do this. And what I would say is let's do this right here. Let's draw a line down through there. Okay. And let's go from there. All right. So we know from a tally chart earlier in the week that we do our tallies or our ticks, and then the frequency is the number of tallies. So let's just kind of go down through here and write what these values are. Okay. And I'm just counting my ticks. Okay. And when I add all of these up, I get a total of 50. Okay. And that's important because that's going to be the bottom number of our fraction, our denominator. Okay. So what I'm going to do is set this up, and to get the relative frequency, it's going to take the frequency out of the total. So it's going to be 3 out of 20, right? 12 out of 20. Okay. Excuse me. Not out of 20. Let's go back. 3 out of 50. I apologize because it's a 50. I was looking at that number for some reason. This is out of 50. 20 out of 50. 19 out of 50. And then 1 out of 50. Okay. Since it is 50, we could get this to a percent very easily, but it's not always going to be out of 50. We could just double the bottom and double the top, right? So if I scaled that up and just to talk about that, that could be out of 100 times 2, and that equals 6%, and that equals 6/10, right? But let's just make sure we can use our calculator for this because it's not always going to be that easy, right? So it's going to be 12 out of 50, all right? And then to change that to a percent, I hit second percent, all right? And when I do that, you'll see arrow percent comes up, and there it is. So let me turn that light on. You might be able to see. All right, so that's 12 out of 50, which equals 24%, which equals 0.24. If you wanted the decimal value, to take a percent to a decimal, 2 to the left. 20 out of 50, here we go. Okay, and let's go ahead and see if we just hit enter, that comes up, but I want to change it to a percent, so that's 40%. And then 2 to the left is 4/10, right? 19 out of 50. I want to change that to a percent, which is 38%, and that's 0.38, 2 to the left. Okay. And then if it's 1 out of 50, I'm not even going to use that. We could say that's what? 2% times 2 times 2, and that's 0.02. Okay. And then if I wanted to put the total out of at 50 out of 50, which equals what? 100%, which equals 1 whole. 1 whole is 100%, right? So that's real quick from taking the tallies to the frequency. I split this in half, made a fraction, changed it to a percent, and then to a decimal, and I kind of worked backwards there on that first one. All right, so now we're going to use this information to answer these questions. What percent of the customers had a waist that measured 28 inches or greater? What percent? 28 inches, all right, or greater. So I need this, this, and this. So I want to add these three up. And when I add those three up, let's see what we get here. 40, all right. What percent of the customers had a waist that measured 28 inches or greater? 28 inches or greater. So that would be, yep, I'm just making sure here. So what percent? 40, 78, 79. I get 80%. What interval has the greatest relative frequency? Well, certainly the greatest is going to be here because it's at 40%, right? It's nice to compare those. What percent of the customers had a waist measurement of less than 26%? Less than, all right? So when we talk about this less than, we're only looking at this number, and it is 6%. Mrs. B's is going to start selling belts that come in various sizes. Which sizes should she order to meet her customers' needs? So when we look at this, all right, we have to kind of look at the cluster of the data. Okay, so I have a nice cluster of data here with a median of this one. And really, that would be the mean, the mode of this one, and that would be the median of it. So when I want to order some belts, all right, I would order probably 26 inches to 32 inches, right? These are the belts that I'm going to need. So I would order 26, all right, to, all right, 32 inches. Makes sense? Because we're not selling these or these, so why order a bunch of them? Doesn't make sense. Let's flip it over and get into number 2. We have another frequency table. So what we're going to do is, again, let's split this up, okay? And then down below, we got some bar graphs, right? Or excuse me, some histograms, all right? So let's get into this thing. Well, there's nothing here. It's 0. 0. If there's not a 5, 5, 10, 14, 5, 6. So if we add all of these up, and by the way, that's 0, we end up with 25, right? That's our total number. That's our denominator. So I don't need anything here, and I really don't need anything here. We can start right here, 5 out of 25. And again, this is a nice number because if I multiply it by 4, I get to 100. But we'll use the calculator anyway. We want to take this to a percent, and then we want to take it to a percent and then to a decimal, okay? So it's going to go to 20%, and that equals 1, 2 is 0.2. We move it to the left. 14 out of 25. 14 out of 25. And let's change that to having all kind of problems here, aren't I? Percent, and that's 56%, and that equals 0.56. And again, we move that decimal point to the left to get to this point. 6 out of 25. Second percent button gives us 24%. 6 out of 25, 24%, and that's 0.24. And what you're going to notice, if I add all of these up, I'll get 100%, right? And let's go ahead and finish this. 25 out of 25 is 100%, which equals 1 whole. Okay? All right, so we're rolling along. That shouldn't be an issue. I do want you to draw that line. I do want to split it up. I want you to set it up, and I'm certainly going to let you use your calculator. Create a histogram. All right. So let's get into this thing. So, it says create one histogram of frequency and one histogram of relative frequency. Then answer the questions. Okay. All right. So frequency is the number. The relative frequency is the decimal. And the only thing that's going to vary between these two is the y-axis. The y-axis. So we've got some work to do here. Both are length of commercials, right? I'm going to abbreviate commercials. Okay. And then across the bottom, I'm going to put my time because, excuse me, right? It's the length of the commercials. There's our time, right? Right. And then on the vertical axis or the y-axis, I'm going to put frequency. All right. Now, we always start with 0. This is the point of origin. And you'll notice there are some lines here to help us do our bars because on a histogram, the bars do touch. Okay. And across the bottom, I'm going to count by these intervals. So it's 0 to 4, which is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Okay. So 0 to 4, 5 to 9, so on down the line. Now, on our vertical axis, all right, I'm going to look at these numbers, all right? And when I look at these numbers, the biggest number I have here is 14. So if I count by twos, let's see where it would get me. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Yeah, that makes good sense. We can get up to 14 on our histogram. So let's do that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. Okay? So now what we're going to do for our first block on the histogram, 0 to 5, or excuse me, 0 to 4, we're not going to put anything because there's nothing there. We're going to jump to the 5 to 10. And 5 to 10, okay, has 5. There it is. So I'm going to come up to this number, 5, which is in between 4 and 6, and I'm going to fill in this block. Okay. And then the next one's the big boy, 14. 10 to 9, or excuse me, 10 to 14 is 14. So I'm going to come up to 14 and draw that line. And then I'm going to put my vertical lines down. Okay. And I'm going to make it nice and give it one of those. All right, the last piece of information in this is 15 to 19, and there it is. So 15 to 19 is 6, so that's nice and clean, and there we have it. Okay. All right, we're going to do the same thing over here, but we're going to use this data, all right, to make our histogram. So the only thing that's going to change is our vertical axis. Length of commercial. This is still time. And up here is still frequency. All right. My horizontal numbers are going to remain the same. My intervals are going to remain the same because my intervals of the commercials are the same. Now, what is going to change is over here, all right, we listed the frequency. Over here, we're going to list the relative frequency. And the difference is this is the number of ticks. This is the fraction or the percent or the decimal. What does it out of a whole? How many out of the whole? So the biggest number here is going to be 0.56. So if I counted by, what, 0.1, am I going to get there? 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. I could do that, sure. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shorten it up and I'm going to count by 2/10. So 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, right? And then what? 1/0. And that's all the further I need to go. And you're going to notice that the only difference between these is this vertical axis and the height of our bars. Watch. The first one is 0.2. I come up to 0.2, and there it is. This represents the same data. This is just the decimal value out of the whole. And the whole is 25. Over here, 10 to 14, it goes up to 0.56. Well, here's 0.4, here's point. So I'm going to kind of guesstimate where that goes, and it goes right there. And there it is. And then finally, the last one is 0.24, and it goes just a little bit above 0.2, and there's it down, and there we are. So you'll notice that the difference in the bars is the height and the y-axis, and that's a big thing to understand. One represents frequency, one represents relative frequency. Okay, so let's continue on here. And somebody just walked in, and I'll be right with you. I'm shooting a video. It's okay. Thank you. All right. What is similar between the two histograms? We talked about this just a second ago. What's similar? Everything's similar except for the y-axis. So really everything is similar, right? Except the y-axis, right? What is different? We just answered that, right? The y-axis. It's the intervals changes, the height of the bars. So when the interval changes on the y-axis, our bars certainly are, and let's just put bar heights, right? So we're pretty efficient there. Letter C. What would a relative frequency histogram be more beneficial than a than just a relative frequency? Excuse me, than a frequency histogram. All right, and this is kind of hard to explain, right? So, but if you want to compare each interval on the entire total amount, then a relative frequency table would be the best. Meaning this: if you just want heights of bars, you would use the frequency. If you want to know what it is out of the whole, and in this case, the whole is 25, we would put it into a fraction form. So, that's what you have to kind of look at with there. All right. Okay. So let's talk about the homework real quick, where you're headed. You're going to be heading to this page, which is page 5. And you're going to make a frequency table, relative frequency. Don't forget to draw the line. All right, you're going to answer these questions. All right, guys, have a good day. I'll see you.